Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to the 5th video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia in 6 days. So it's been a heavy week for Opera Omnia fans, and welcome to today's Should You Pull video for Warrior of Light, LD and Burst, Thancred and Laguna's EX+. And also we're going to be covering the very first Lufenia difficulty challenge within Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, and it's going to be a pretty exciting weekend, or start to the week for all of us, because new burst, new difficulty, new stuff. There's a lot going on, and I really am looking forward to seeing what we can do with this brand new difficulty setting. So if that's all stuff that you guys are interested in, then stay tuned and keep on watching. As always guys, don't forget to check out all of the social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. Twitch this week, unfortunately, as I said in my last video, I have to delay doing my Final Fantasy count up for another week, but on Sunday I will always, as every Sunday morning, I always stream Final Fantasy XIV, and I will be streaming Warrior of Light, my pulls, and hopefully clearing the Lufenia on Monday, and I'll be streaming a lot more over the course of next week, so you'll have a lot more to look forward to on that front. On Patreon, I always give a shout out to one of my patrons so that I can give thanks to each and every one of you individually, and today that person is going to be Michael O'Fox, so thank you very much for your support. Brand new patron, and I'm very happy to say that I've actually managed to come up to 70 patrons, which is maddening. So thank you all so much for your support, and I'm really hope that all of the stuff that I bring to the table in terms of being able to give back to you guys for supporting me in the way that you do. So would you pull your title cards, the voice chats every month? If there's anything else that you guys can think of that you would like to see from my Patreon, then definitely let me know. Don't forget to check out all of the links for various websites to do with Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, and I'm actually adding 2 more to that list, and they come from 2 of the more prolific people within the Opera Omnia community, which are Rem and the Tombury Troupe, by adding a Lufenia database, which is lufenia.database.dev, I believe. Dissidia.dev. And then I'm also adding in the Tombury Troupe's Lufenia research into my list, or my static list of links for Dissidia stuff, because those 2 are incredible resources for you if you're struggling with Lufenia or you want to know more about stuff as it comes out. And lastly, of course, do not forget to check out all of the other content creators below besides myself. So we're going to get started on the banners first of all, and there's actually 2 banners that come with this, one of which contains Agrius, Sync and Ida's EXs, and then the other, and obviously Warrior of Light, LD and Burst, and then the other features Warrior of Light's own EX, and then Thancred and Laguna. Now I imagine that the majority of people are going to pull on the banner that has Laguna and Thancred on it, because they're both characters that a lot of people didn't necessarily pull for the first time they came around because they were quite late in getting their EX. Well, actually, Thancred was early, but a lot of people managed to miss it, including myself. Whereas the other banner with Agrius and Sync, etc., none of them are hugely appealing at this point in time. But Laguna and Thancred get their EX pluses and also slight reworks as well. So we're going to start with Laguna. Now, Laguna's rework basically gives him more grenade uses so that he can sort of just make sure he gets the debuff straight down as quickly as possible, more efficiently. And he also gets Brave Overflow on grenade. And then Shotgun gets a tremendous kind of increase in its hit count, going from 2 to 6. Being that it's an AoE Brave HP attack, and it has more Brave Overflow on it. So Laguna's primary function is just to deal those core debuffs, so defense down, speed down, attack down. He also provides some party buffs as well, like he has attack up and max bravery up. He also has a nice party aura from his World of Illusions weapon, the Hellblow gun. So if you've got that handy as well, it is going to help. But Laguna's EX originally was kind of like it was one of the later sort of EXs to come about before EX Plus started happening. It's not terrible. It was a hit Brave HP. It was single target to begin with, which is a bit rubbish, and it grants him a buff that makes it so that you deal more bravery damage based on how many debuffs are afflicted onto the target, and it raises max bravery as well. But it's got a normal recast rate to start with, and then that obviously goes up, so he's got a decent recharge rate. But his HP attack was originally a single hit Brave HP attack, which is not acceptable in this day and age. Luckily, with his EX Plus, he does actually get some quite nice stuff. So when you use his Ragnarok Buster, it makes it so that he deals his core debuffs with his EX, so he's not having to use Grenade all the time. So you're going to keep up those debuffs, and they're quite strong debuffs, considering that it's just the 3 core ones. They're actually quite potent ones, so it is nice to have. And then he starts with all of the buffs that he would start with normally. He gives the party the medium max brave up, which he would have gotten from using his attacks as well. He also inflicts all of his framed versions of his debuffs as well, which, as we've seen with characters like Kefka and Emperor, the fact that they're framed versions of these debuffs means that it's harder for them to kind of like overwrite them with buffs and things like that. So the fact that they're framed can be sort of like a benefit to you as well, because it means that you can also stack them with other sort of debuffs that are of a similar variety. And then at 3 out of 3 he gets it so that it's an AoE bravery attack, but it's still a single target HP attack, which is not the best. But it happens twice, so it's 12 hit brave HP. And then he gets an HP plus, which is a 2-hit AoE bravery attack, single HP attack, that is faster. Laguna's nice, and I will say the same thing about Thancred. Like, they're both quite nice characters to have, but there are just much more pressing uses of your ingots and things like that. I think if you really like Thancred or Laguna, the fact that you can use them is really, really cool, but they're not going to be characters you bring forward to many Lufenias or anything like that in the future. You'll probably, like Chaos Challenges or anything like that they're featured in, they could come in handy, but they're quite few and far between as well. So I just think that while Laguna does get his improvements, I think it's a case of too little too late for him. So now moving on to Thancred and his rework in EX+. Thancred's basic function is to poison things and deal damage to things that are poisoned, and that hasn't changed with his rework in EX+. So his his skill 1, he gets more bravery hits on it. It goes from 2 hits all the way up to 6, which is significantly better. He has a guaranteed HP attack on it at last, because all of these conditional HP attacks are very much a thing of the past. It also has a huge brave overflow now of 180%, which it didn't have before, and it's all just there to make his skill 1 actually usable for reasons other than just inflicting poison. And then his skill 2, he gets more uses of as well. It also gets an extra hit on the bravery count. It now deals splash damage to enemies, and it also inflicts poison to everything. So he's now not like solely single target. He does deal some splash damage as well. But he also gets his EX plus here. Now, his EX was originally like quite a strange one, because like we hadn't really seen many sort of special effects when he came out, because he did actually come out quite early, and he was really strong for a little while when he first came out. But he was one of those characters that very quickly got pushed to the wayside, because there were other characters that just got released that were stronger. But his Bavakakra ability basically was stronger if you gained enough of these Ninki stacks that you got for using either Brave Attack, HP Attack, or his skills, and you'd be able to stack up to 5 of them. And if you had at least 3 of them, then you'd consume 3 of them to make his EX attack a lot stronger. And that actually stays pretty much the same with his EX+, but he gets a lot more out of it. So with 0 out of 3, he gets 8 hits instead of 4, so it immediately doubles damage, which is nice, but it's still not quite enough on its own. His 1 out of 3 basically just gives him stats, like they always do. He starts with no ability consumption on the first turn, which is kind of nice, because it means basically he's starting with poison on all the enemies, or like however you want to go about that. It's useful, and it helps you with your recharge rate. And then 3 out of 3, he gets basically Bavakakra changed from 8-hit Brave HP to 4-hit Brave HP inflicted twice, unless it's the plus version where it's 8-hit inflicted twice. So it's a 16-hit Brave HP attack that also deals some splash damage on top of it. You also refund bravery after the first HP attack. It actually does do a lot of damage. And then he also gets a better version of his Brave Plus and his HP Plus, though his Brave Plus is a no action delay, no turn increase, consumes your Ninki, gives poison, and it also gives you a free ability use on the next turn. So basically, a lot of the FF14 characters have these ways of giving themselves free skill uses and making it so that they can last that much longer. So that Brave attack, it's kind of like somewhere between Zidane and Alphino, in terms of like Zidane having the free bravery attack and then Alphino having the free skill use on the following turn. And then his HP plus is a 3-hit brave HP attack that inflicts poison. So it's nice. Again, I will say the same thing with Thancred as I did with Laguna. His stuff is nice. He does a lot better than he did before. For anyone who really likes Thancred, then they're going to be pleased with the fact that he's gotten a nice rework, that his EX Plus makes it so that he's actually usable. Are you going to use him in a lot of Lufenia missions? No, probably not. And if you've got a bunch of characters with their LDs and their full kits and stuff, then they're probably going to see a lot more use in your party than Thancred or Laguna will. But if you really like those characters and you want a reason to use them, then now's probably the best time to do so. So now we come over to the main attraction for these particular banners, which is Warrior of Light himself. Now, Warrior of Light also receives some little bits and pieces when it comes to rework-wise. Now, he gets some more Brave Overflow on his skill 1, which he didn't have before, so it now has 120% based on the gained bravery, which is great. The shield itself is massively improved, so the percentage that you get on your shield based on your initial bravery is now increased, so it's now more in line with Lufenia, Late Chaos, that kind of thing. And also you get an extra hit on both HP Attack Plus and HP Attack Plus Plus, and HP Plus didn't originally have a bravery hit at all, so even if they were on 0 bravery and you gained some bravery before you hit them but you didn't break them, and that was always a thing that was a bit iffy with Warrior of Light. And now that he's got that, you haven't got to worry about it, and you get an extra hit on his skill 2, so it's now raise bravery, 2 bravery, HP attack, so you get additional hits on that and more overflow as well on the HP plus plus. And then his skill 2 now has 2 extra skill uses, and both of his skills now extend the duration that he gets his Will of Light buff for, which increases your initial bravery, your attack. It gives brave regen to your party as well, which is really nice. And you also get a really nice amount of Brave Overflow on his skill 2 as well. For those of you who haven't used Warrior of Light very much, which I mean, most people who've played Opera Omnia have used Warrior of Light at some time or another, given that he's one of the characters you start the game with, then his shields are like a barrier that stop your opponent, not only stop you taking bravery damage, but stop your opponent gaining it, because they're not actually hitting you. And that's one of the biggest things about shields in this game that's very, very helpful. Then his EX we've seen before in that it heals, like he's had his EX plus for quite a while. It heals the party for 10% of their max HP, which is handy, but it's the only healing that Warrior of Light actually has here. It's useful, definitely. He gets he basically increases his speed with his EX, so it's something you're going to want to use as regularly as possible, so to keep his speed up so that he's able to keep up with that. But his new weapons, his LD, now his LD I'm absolutely in love with. Like, I think it's fantastic. Bitter End raises party battery, so it's a party battery for bravery. It's an 8-hit brave HP with 50% splash damage to the other targets. It's another ability that gives lock, and then it also gives the ability Guardian Shield. Now Guardian Shield is party stats through the roof, so everyone's defenses go up, everyone's sort of offensive stats, so initial, max, bravery, and attack all go up. It also reduces the amount of damage, HP damage you take, based on the amount of shield you have. So not only is Warrior of Light now protecting your bravery, he's now protecting your HP as well. So if you've got shield up, and given that Bitter End and most of his skills do grant shield, or pretty much all of them grant shield for one reason or another, it's going to make things a lot harder for you to take damage, which is one of the best things that you can really ask for, because Warrior of Light's always enabled you to kind of go on the full offensive on aggro, and it actually just makes it even more so that you can just go on aggro and not worry about getting broken or taking too much damage or anything like that. He allows you to be a little bit more reckless, though you do only get 3 uses of this, unless of course you have the burst, in which case you get 4. But you do have to be sparing with it, because the Guardian Shield ability only lasts for 10 turns. Now, 30 turns of not taking HP damage, essentially, is a pretty nice thing to have, if you ask me. But there are other tanks in the game. Like, tanks aren't, like, they're all different to each other. Like, if you have Barsh, or if you're planning on pulling Gladio, then the chances are that there are going to be times where you use them over Warrior of Light. But Warrior of Light is definitely not one to be sniffed at, because he has those shields, which means that you can be a bit more reckless on the offense than you could with other tanks. You can be a little bit more sort of experimental with your party compositions. The one thing that he doesn't have that's that much of is his HP healing. So if you're not taking damage from these attacks, but you're having to take damage in between your cast of Bitter End, then having another like healer that maybe not like necessarily a support healer, but somebody like maybe Desh or Raijin that just happens to have HP regen in their kit is going to be a really nice pairing with Warrior of Light. Now, Warrior of Light is also getting a burst here. Now, I really want Warrior of Light's burst, but that's because I'm a massive fan of Warrior of Light, and he and Cecil are my favourite protagonists in the entire franchise. So I kind of want it, but it's definitely not a mandatory one. ultimate shield is your typical sort of split damage burst attack, and obviously in a burst you get an extra use out of all of his skills, including his LD, which is really nice. And then the burst effect gives you a brave regen effect, and you raise your bravery based on the amount of shield that character has. Now, given that shield's been improved and you're going to have shield, or you should have shield pretty frequently if you're using Warrior of Light, it's definitely a big improvement, but it's not amazing. It's nice. And you also get more Brave Overflow limit for the party for the 4 turns in which you have the burst effect. Again, really nice. But with Warrior of Light, being a more support-based character, you can take Warrior of Light's burst with you if you want a burst on a tank, because there aren't any other tanks that really get one, and you want to take other damage dealers like VV that are like massive damage dealers that don't have a burst. But because you can only activate one burst per fight, if you're going to be bringing a burst, usually it's going to be a damage dealer like Noctis, Lightning, Cloud, etc. because you're just going to get that much more out of the burst than you would with a character like Warrior of Light. So while I personally really want Warrior of Light's burst because he's one of my favourite characters, I'm not going to go ahead and pity this because it's just not necessary. His LD, however, I do really like. When it comes to Artifact, it's a fairly simple fare across the board. With Thancred, you want his offensive stats. He needs attack and he needs max bravery. He doesn't have a C50 or anything that he takes advantage of here, so you just want those raw offensive stats. Laguna, increased brave damage dealt with group attacks by 5%. Like, pretty much everything he does AoE bravery damage, so you're going to want to take advantage of that. And then, of course, attack. And then Warrior of Light, again, you want attack, especially if you're wanting to use his burst because you want to get as much damage out of him as you can. And then his class change boost is just an all-around stat boost as long as his HP is max. You could also make an argument for initial bravery here because initial bravery is what his shield is based off of. But you could, so you've got a little bit of wiggle room with Warrior of Light. But generally speaking, artifacts are pretty much the same across the board now. Attack, unless there's a character that's not dealing a lot of damage, and then their C50 if they've got it, max bravery if they don't, initial bravery if it's something that a lot of their abilities are scaled off of. So now let's talk about the event itself and what sorts of things we're going to want to take along for the Lufenia mission, the very first one we're going to be getting, which is going to be Shinryu. Now I'm actually going to start by showing you guys some screenshots that I've taken from the 2 websites I've added to my static list of links, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what Rem from Dissidia DUB and now this lovely database and also the Tonberry Troop have to say, because I want to showcase the hard work that these guys put in, and if I can give any attention to those guys, then I'm going to. Now, Shinryu comes in 2 waves. So Shinryu is like the first fight, and then honestly, like the second fight is epic, and the music's really good, and the setup's really good. So honestly, these climactic battles in Dissidia Opera Omnia, they actually managed to nail, and they're very, very cool. Shinryu is immune to HP attack disable, so you're not going to be wanting to bring Arciela or Kefka along to this one. And Shinryu also, like the first wave, doesn't have a Lufenia orb to begin with. So he's just going to like make it so that characters can't heal, and that he does more bravery and HP damage himself. So basically, shields are the name of the game here, which makes sense given that Warrior of Light is the primary character. Though if you have 9, then he also brings along shields, so he's somebody that you may want to consider as well. The second wave, however, for Shinryu does have the Lufenia orb, and the Lufenia orb will appear when he does his recast attack, which is a AoE Brave HP. That also inflicts some he also inflicts a lot of debuffs across the fight as well. And the way to keep the orb down is to make sure that his bravery is less than 25% of his maximum. Now, basically you don't want this to go off. There is a chance that you could survive this attack, but honestly, don't even try and rely on it, because the chances are that this thing will kill you, and you honestly want to get into the habit of making sure that these Lufenia orbs don't go off, because what you don't want to happen is that you sit there and go, oh, it's fine, I can dodge this one, and then the next one comes along, you can't deal with it, and it insta-kills you. So start getting into the habit from the get-go of not letting these Lufenia orbs go off for any reason. And now this one, it dispels all your buffs, it does an AoE Brave HP, and it also makes it so that he gets Bravery and HP on top of it on regens. So even if it isn't going to kill you, which it most likely will, you still don't really want it to go off. So make sure you keep his bravery down as much as possible. Laguna, if you're using him, can actually help with this because he really reduces his attack, his defense, his speed, so it means that you've got more time to deal with it. And if you can hold his bravery down for as long as up until he uses his recast again, then that's when the Lufenia orb will leave, until obviously the next time he uses his recast. So you get these kind of on and off modes of when you start attacking him, like making sure that his Lufenia doesn't go off, like just making that the priority. Then the orb goes away, then you go back into your damage phase, and then repeat ad nauseum. Now the other thing that Shinryu does is he alternates a coloured aura on himself every turn that he takes and at certain HP thresholds. Now if it's yellow, he gets a stat boost and he can't be delayed for any reason, including breaks, so be cautious of that. And then if it's purple, then you can't gain bravery or HP through effects, but you can still hit him with bravery attacks. If it's green, he heals, he drains HP off of his own attacks and he can't miss. And then if it's blue, he doesn't receive bravery damage. Like, you can gain bravery and then deal HP damage, but you can't deal bravery damage to him. And this changes every turn, so you need to keep up with this and change your plans accordingly depending on what colour he is. Obviously, if he's going in with like, oh, I can't take bravery damage, don't go using your skills that inflict loads of bravery hits because you're just going to waste them. Now, obviously, Warrior of Light is a fantastic character to bring along to this. Desh is also a character that I've seen a lot of clears for because he has that HP damage reduction. He also has the field auras. He has Imperil Enchant on him. It's just really, really handy to have all around. For the same reason, Barsh could be used here as well because he's able to soak up a lot of this damage and essentially not die. You're wanting to bring somebody that has some sort of turn manipulation as well, so that if you're at a point where Shinryu can take a lot of damage, then you can make the most of that period of time. So somebody like Noctis or Ardyn is going to be really, really powerful for you. So, I mean, if you want to bring a friend unit, then you're going to want to bring, like, either, I mean, as according to Tombury Troop at the very least, you want to bring a Mid-Italian or Noctis, because, again, turn manipulation. You could bring your own Mid-Italian, because Shinryu is very vulnerable to debuffs, given that both Thancred and Laguna are synergy characters for this, so if you wanted to bring them along. He does also inflict a lot of debuffs to you, so if you have a form of debuff evasion, like Aphmau, you could bring them along as well. But honestly, the team that I plan to take is probably going to be Warrior of Light, Desh, and then a third character, probably a Mid-Italian, somebody that can battery, can deal a decent amount of damage, can also inflict these nice debuffs, and then you just be able to just repeatedly attack. But you just have to be careful using characters like Warrior of Light and a Mid-Italian and Noctis, because there's a lot of debuffs there that can get pushed off of one another. So the example that I've given here for Lufenia is going to contain Desh, Noctis, and Barsh, and that's purely on the assumption that you're not pulling on this banner at all. I don't personally have Desh, so I can't do this, but Desh and Warrior of Light together is really, really nice because you're taking less HP damage, you've got the HP regens, you've got all that nice stuff, and they just work really well together because they don't impede on one another, and then Noctis just kind of just does his thing and just does ridiculous amounts of damage. So now we come to the big question of the video: should you pull on either of Warrior of Light's burst banners? Now, I think the main reason to pull on this banner is Warrior of Light's LD, not his burst. Like, Warrior of Light's LD is actually really powerful, and it opens up a very wide variety of team compositions. It allows you, as I said earlier, to be a bit more reckless with your damage dealing, because the shields will stop you from taking damage, and then obviously the HP damage shield from his LD is going to make it so that you just feel that much safer. He is a tank, like, so if you have Barsh already, or you're looking at Gladiolus in the future, then he may not necessarily be as imperative to you, but I, as a personal fan of Warrior of Light, think that his LD is really, really strong. I would like to have his burst purely on the back of the fact that he's not a core damage dealer, and it means that I can experiment with other team compositions, like having Vivi as my primary damage dealer, for example, and then sort of playing around with that. But I definitely don't think the Warrior of Light's burst is one that you absolutely have to go for, like Noctis or Lightning. It's just a nice extra. And then the side characters I would consider to be nice bonuses, so Thancred and Laguna. If you got them while you were pulling for Warrior of Light's LD, then I would be happy about it, but I wouldn't pull on this banner for them. I think that they're great for a very, very minimal amount of time, and therefore they're going to get pushed to the wayside unless you're a massive fan of those characters and you're kind of pushing yourself to use them. Like, I mean, there are people who have used like Tidus in Lufenia, like in every Lufenia over in Japan, and therefore if you can make that work, then you can make these guys work as well. So don't see this as a don't pull for them, they're bad kind of thing, but you can make the characters work. It just might take a little bit more work from you than it would with other characters that have their LDs, etc. If you're not wanting to pull in this banner because you've like wasted, or when I say wasted, you've used all of your resources on VV, like I've had to pity VV as well, so I feel your pain if you have, then you could just save for Gladiolus, because Gladiolus is an insane tank that is getting used in JP to this day and isn't that far away. So if you're cleared out of resources, you could wait for him and take this time to save for him, because you're gonna want a couple of tanks, and this, since Barsh is the month of tank, where you're getting 8 as an evade tank, you're getting Warrior of Light as a shield tank, you're getting Gladio as a cover tank. Like, there's loads of different ways to go about it, but I think that Warrior of Light is really good, so I'm probably going to go for his LD, but that could well be bias on my part for loving the character. If you already have Barsh and you're looking at Gladio, like I said earlier, then it's not as important for you to go for Warrior of Light. He's a protagonist. He hasn't had his LD boards come yet. So, like, it'll be a long while before Warrior of Light gets his burst and LD come back on a banner, but it is going to happen eventually because he's a protagonist and you can pretty much guarantee it's going to happen. So, my personal plan is to try and ticket Warrior of Light's LD, of course, provided if I get it in a free pull, because there's 2 free pulls coming along with this, then I'm going to be jumping for joy after pitying VV. But I will probably ticket Warrior of Light's LD and then see what happens. I am not going to go chasing his burst. So now it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, can let me know whether you plan on pulling on a particular banner or want to save your resources for another time. Now, with the patrons that I've asked, and obviously now for those of you who have been asking how many votes is this exactly, well, now you know, then 64% of people have said yes, they were going to pull on with this banner with tickets. 24% of people said yes, they were going to pull on this with gems, and 12% said that they weren't going to pull on this banner at all. So this one's a little bit more widespread than the VV banner that we had before. Now, Jeffrey Redcloud says, without hesitation, yes. My Warrior of Light is ready for his LD and burst, but if the burst doesn't come right away, I'm still going in for 8 and Kurosame. I don't need Thancred because he's already ready for realisation, just waiting for it to be unlocked, but I'll take any power stones, I still have a lot of characters to build. So this is a good point in terms of the fact that if you don't necessarily get Warrior of Light's burst and you want it from this banner, Kurosame and L8 are both really strong banners that you could try and pull for them on, so I wouldn't stress too heavily about that. And then, not only that, but we've obviously got people who have said that they're not going to pull on this banner as well. And we have Pale Raider who says, hard skip on WoL. With Barsh on the team and the draft notice already out for Gladio, I don't need or even want another tank, at least not for a little while. With planned draws on 8 and Kurosame, even by some miracle, RNG decides to donate a free burst my way, I will not chase WoL's LD. Not even with tickets. The reason is simple. The upcoming gauntlet of banners is going to be brutal and unforgiving. For now, there is no room for duplicitous rolls and wasted potentials, at least not for my roster. And this is quite a strong opinion towards Warrior of Light, but it's not an unwarranted one either. Barsh and Gladio are kind of either side of Warrior of Light, and Barsh will carry you for a little while to come yet, and Gladio lasts for an absolutely ridiculous amount of time. So if you're not stressed about getting Warrior of Light, you don't have to pull for him. Tidal Wade here says, the resource burn from VV was real with no return, but I may still throw some tickets at Warrior of Light. I owe him quite a bit for past health, so I'd love to get his LD. Gotta hold back for 8 and Gladiolus though. So yeah, VV I think has burned quite a lot of people, unfortunately, and not just me. So if you are hurting for resources, then a lot of people are going to be waiting for Gladiolus. Cobalt Zork says 2 back-to-back pities, no regrets, means Warrior of Light will only get some tickets. Wow, VV claimed a lot of victims. There's a lot to gain on those banners though, as I lack pretty much every unit, so maybe a couple of cheeky free EXs along the way. Not going to go too deep because I've already got Warrior of Light locked into an earlier DE, and Gladio is lumbering around the corner with some tasty noodles. So once again, people are going to probably wait for the Gladiolus for a large portion. Raelius, however, says gems right away. WoL's LD is has amazing longevity. I'm still using him occasionally to this day in JP, even with him being level 70 locked. He is super fun to pair with Gladiolus for several fights. And this is interesting because why not have both? Like, if you want Warrior of Light and Gladiolus, as I do, then why not have both? You could pair them up because they actually fulfill fairly different roles despite the fact that they're both tanks. And the damage output is pretty good. And the fact that people who are playing JP are still using Warrior of Light, I mean, it can't be that long before he gets his level 80, his LD call, etc. So it might be interesting to see what comes out of that. Aya Brea says, I have a purple wall and I can't just sit there and not go for his LD. In my opinion, he fits better into a team and allows more damage dealers to operate more freely. So this comes back to what I was saying about the fact that you can experiment with like reckless behavior with your damage dealers. So it actually just turns out like having shields and HP nullification and stuff like that without actually having to inflict HP disable. It means that you're able to stay safe whilst going all in with your damage dealer. So VV being VV, if you've got like him as your damage dealer and you're burning through your HP, while Warrior of Light probably isn't going to be your sole healer on that party, he is still going to be able to deal a large amount of damage and Warrior of Light be the character that keep you safe. So thank you all to those of you who left comments towards Warrior of Light's banners as to whether you would pull or not. If you would like to join in with Would You Pull and a plethora of other sort of benefits and title cards and all sorts of things, then definitely take a chance to have a look at the Patreon link in the description box below. So that's going to be all for today's video, and man, this week has been heavy for Dissidia Opera Omnia. We've had Vivi come out of nowhere, we've had the community stream, we've had Should You Pulls all over the place, we've had emotional roller coasters of banners like with pities and all sorts of things this week. So hopefully next week will be a little bit calmer, but given that we have this new content in Lufenia, I'm actually very excited to see what comes out of this new era for Global. Let me know in the comments below whether you plan on pulling for Warrior of Light's LD, or if you're actually more interested in Laguna or Thancred, and let me know exactly who you're going to be taking to the Lufenia for this event and for any futures to come. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that bell for notifications in any future videos I might be making. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.